Okay,
I'm listening.
They're on top of the ball. They were like, we know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
We were outside and having our...
Oh, yeah, you got giant.
I can see us up.
Well, and plus they haven't been able to access.
The center's not selling.
Yeah.
I will address that.
Well, I mean, I'm just disappointed.
I hear what you're saying. And that ultimately decision was not up to me. That was left at a General Assembly to make that decision. And I wasn't happy with it myself, but I can't decide that for everyone else.
Understood.
I hear you, John. I'm sorry.
Would have been good to have the heads up, but that's fine. Okay, so I'm here to listen.
Like Congress gives us a heads up on all this crap.
Anyway, I'm here on behalf of the Senate. I'm John Tracy. I'm the state director.
Hi, John Tracy.
How are you? So,
We really like our internet.
Yes, we do.
yes, do we?
And we're very concerned that that Senator Leahy has taken such a leading role on promoting a bill that we and a lot of people around the country, as you're probably aware of from the activism that's been going around, are very worried about the implications of. So I was wondering what the senator's sort of position is on this, and why he's standing on that position right now.
It's targeted at foreign road websites where saying that we don't have any jurisdictional capability to talk about counterfeit drugs, counterfeit electronics, things that are produced overseas. It's targeted at road websites who are principally designed to market counterfeit goods. There has been some discussion recently, and there's going to be an amendment introduced that will take out the ISP provision that was troublesome to not, take that out. But what it would be is essentially due process is very much in place. If a foreign website, after going through a court proceeding, is determined to be marketing primarily in counterfeit goods, whether it's medicine, electronic devices, copyrighted material, then that road website would be targeted through not the service provider, but the ad portion of it, the servers, and there's one other component. The long story short, it has to go through a court order to be determined that their sole purpose, their principal purpose, is to deal in counterfeit goods. And there's the due process provisions that are throughout the bill. Essentially, there are provisions in domestic already on the internet side of things. This is for foreign websites.
And that's why you're not getting it done. And this is just an overreach to make it, so you don't have to do the work and do the policing and spend the money.
Well, it's actually to protect American consumers, to protect American jobs. The concerns that have been expressed that this would target a Wikipedia, a Google, those are simply not true. That's not in the legislation. But,
So
it's about American jobs. Things are produced overseas.
specifically American jobs in the Hollywood and the content producing industry, which is one of your major sponsors.
There are artists in Vermont, writers, artists in Vermont whose stuff is taken and reproduced. You may hear from them.
But that side of the issue is one of your major donors, are they not?
First, the fact is this is to protect American consumers and American jobs. I mean, you and I can
It doesn't stop
spend a lot of
Could
time
you answer my question?
What was your question exactly?
Hollywood is one of your major donors, one of your major sources of funding.
You would have to talk to the senator's campaign office as to. I don't deal in the fund on the politics side.
Really?
I don't. I'm here on the policy shop. That's what I do. So you're making that face. I don't deal with that.
Okay.
And who the senator takes
That's
contributions from?
We're glad you're not aware. We're glad you're not aware of the money.
What I'm saying is that is not my job in this office to do that. I'm a policy guy, and that's what I'm doing. Now you can go on the website and you can find out who donates to what campaigns. That's public knowledge. But I can also tell you that we started having a discussion the other day, but there are jobs in America that are lost due to countries that produce things that are counterfeit and are sold as marketable items.
Many more of them are lost due to corporations that take them overseas, and you're not working on that, are you? So it's bullshit to the job stuff.
I'm not going to get into the foul language with you.
John, I think the point that Brett was trying to make is well taken there. You look on PurePublica or lots of Open Congress, lots of other websites that document campaign contributions. The senator made over $900,000 from sponsors of this bill, which, when there's such an outcry, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the senator's Facebook wall today. I haven't seen a single one of the hundreds of Vermonters who commented on there in favor of PIPA or SOPA. In fact, unanimously, every single one's against it. But perhaps because we don't have $900,000 like the sponsors of this bill, our voice isn't being heard by our elected representatives.
First of all, Jonathan, I'm here with you. You know, and I work with the senators, so to say your voices aren't heard is simply not true. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this discussion. And you can look, we talked about this the other day, you can look at Senator Leahy's record, and he has stood up forever and will continue. He doesn't promote censorship, he's trying to protect our civil liberties. His record speaks for itself. And if you look at this, censorship. Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. This is a way to target foreign websites whose primary purpose is to market and counterfeit goods. And there is due process in place. Now, also, if someone's a writer...
But the websites get shut down first.
No, they don't. Not under this proposed legislation, they don't.
So, I mean, since there's substantial disagreement about this, I mean, Wikipedia and Google apparently feel that this legislation impacts their interests, and there's not, like, an urgent problem with counterfeit that we need to deal with as a society. Why does this legislation need to be pushed through?
I would suggest that there is an urgent problem. I mean, there are people who are getting faulty medicine, which they think is probably the right thing, whether it's a heart medication or a cancer drug.
In the face of the foreclosure crisis, this is the most important thing.
And you think this legislation is likely to change that, really?
It will. It will go back at those foreign websites that are putting counterfeit goods, whether it's electronics, medicine, tons of items.
Do you understand that if this law goes through and succeeds in blocking domains, the domain name system itself will change to evade that censorship?
Now, I'm not a techie, but...
I am.
It's not to block the domain.
It will be evaded.
The ISP exception, the Senator's already said, and I believe they have in the House and SOPA too, that they're going to take that part of the legislation out. So there's not, and there's things that they can do domestically. They're already in law. This is to help with foreign websites. And, for example, a Wikipedia. There are probably things, or on Huffington Post, there are probably things on there that are copyrighted by people that they may or may not have permission to. They don't qualify. That's not grounds under this legislation to impact them, because that's not their primary goal. And that's the focus of this legislation.
Well, I think Wikipedia and Google are concerned about the slippery slope.
Well, they are. And I think now, this has been going on for a couple of years, and Senator Leahy is a very strong believer. Let's have that debate.
The only people who want this bill are the industry.
No, that's not true. In fact, there are Vermont artists who are in support of this bill. Writers who will tell you. They're going to identify themselves. I'll let them.
You can't name one.
No, I can, but it's not my point.
Can anyone in this office name one?
Well, I can tell you I am a Vermont artist, and I have had my work stolen, borrowed, taken off of my own websites onto other people's websites. Shit happens.
Well,
you know what? I doesn't thrill me, but would I want them to be prosecuted for it? Would I want their websites to be taken down? No.
Well, it's about theft.
Yeah, we already have copyright laws.
You do have them domestically. You do, and this is to apply that on the foreign rogue websites that are just dealing with counterfeit products.
Why does everybody think it's going to have impact all the U.S. websites, and they're just all making this up?
I don't think they're making it up. I think they've identified the number of jobs. I mean, the AFL-CIO supports this, the Chamber of Commerce.
The Chamber of Commerce killing the earth in the interest of free enterprise.
Could you get back to us with a list of artists who support this?
Boy, if you...
That would be helpful to us.
We must take every ounce of oil out of the planet, and we don't care how much carbon we put in the air, because free enterprise must go forward. That's the Chamber of Commerce. Don't talk to me about the Chamber of Commerce. They could give it.
We have a list that they have on the national level. I can just tell you I've been communicating with some local authors who are supportive, and they are going to hopefully do an op-ed, but that's their call, so I'll let them, but you will know them when they identify themselves.
And their work has been stolen by foreign internet
I'll
companies?
let them, they are supportive of this legislation. They are supportive of this legislation.
So there's a couple of people who are going to write an op-ed who are supportive. We can give you a long list of a lot of people who are opposed to it.
And we've heard from them and continue to hear from them. I mean, this is part of the process. You are engaging in the process. The bill... It will be introduced on the 24th, and they will have the debate. It will continue.
John, I think your point's well taken. We are engaging in the process. We're all aware of that. But I think where the rubber hits the road for us is we don't have $900,000.
If money
I
was...
could finish my point. You've been talking for a while.
Yes, I have.
Listen as patiently as I could. Well, you made some points that I didn't necessarily agree with. So I think it's really problematic when companies, big industry, can throw around $900,000. According to ProPublica, the center makes over $300,000 off of those same industries annually anyways. So it's the notion that they can influence this sort of decision in the face of all of this input from the senator's own constituents, which and have more of an impact.
It's not. Okay. It is. A lot of misinformation is out there on this bill, and I know you don't agree, and that's fine, and I understand it. But when this is not going to impact Google, Wikipedia, it is not, because their primary focus is not to marketing counterfeit goods off foreign websites. That's
I think that Google and Wikipedia and the people on the web know more about how the web works than the people in our Congress who don't even know how most of us live.
Well, and I would disagree with that notion as well. I mean, Pat Leahy was born and raised here, has raised his family here, and the money thing this is not what dictates this. You look at his history and what he's done, and it's because he feels he's trying to make life better for people. And you and I went over this a little bit the other day, and we can get deeper into it. Right. But it's, I think he's got a long history of standing up for the little guy and trying to make things fair.
So you voted for NDAA?
As a good faith gesture, perhaps the senator would be willing to donate that $900,000 to Vermont charities and nonprofits, putting Vermonters to work.
I think he's done a lot to try to put Vermonters to work, to feed the hungry, to make sure our landscape stays open. He's done a lot of work, and I'm not going to get into a discussion with you, Jonathan, about what he's
so we haven't successfully had an actual meeting with the senator. How much does that cost?
We don't do it that way. Never have, never will.
How much does it cost to go to one of those fancy plate dinners with him? $1,000? How much is
talk
it?
About fundraising. You're in a senator's office. You're talking to me. I'm a state director.
We think that's how the power works here.
Well, I'm telling you, it doesn't.
But I have a question.
We don't believe you.
Well, that's, you're more than welcome to feel that way.
You say that you are listening.
I am.
I know that your ears are working. I mean, I don't doubt that you are actually, listening to us, but are you actually, does it make a difference? Do the constituents of Vermont make a difference? Because my feeling is that we are not going to make a difference. And that, in fact, you're not really listening.
Well, I don't know what else I can do to convince them listening that I am.
The vast majority of Vermonters do not want this.
Well,
you know what you could do that would convince us? Legislation that benefits us.
I will tell you, as this debate goes forward, which it will, and that's part of the democratic process, you have a fair and open debate.
Seems like all the legislation has been taking away our rights, ruining the Constitution. It seems to me actually traitorous and treasonous to be ruining the Constitution, which you do when you say the military can come and pick us up whenever they want to.
Well, that's an NDA. The military and the legislation cannot come and pick you up. But that's another discussion on NDAA.
The votes match the money, John. If you really personally are feeling like you are not participating in a system where the votes match the money, you need to check yourself personally.
I have more faith in the system, perhaps, than you. And that doesn't mean that...
I'm looking at the numbers, John.
I'm just telling you, what gets Patrick Leahy out of bed in the morning and doing what he has done for all these years is not money. It's about trying to make life better for people. And theft, whether you agree or not, is just wrong. And there is a lot of theft taking place in the Internet, and a lot of it's through old foreign websites, and that is the target of this legislation.
So this legislation will not touch any website that is from the United States?
It's about foreign websites.
So any website that is generated from the United States is just absolutely safe from any of
No,
these
because any
No.
website that's foreign that's connected to one in the United States is who's impacted.
There are laws in place about how to deal with domestic issues around pirating. Those are already in place. This is targeted to foreign websites whose primary purpose is targeting and counterfeit.
So like French websites?
If the primary purpose, well, first of all, we can't, even if this law were to be passed, it's not like we have jurisdiction beyond our borders. But it would be able to work with the ad components, the
And the
service.
websites here that connect to foreign ones.
Well, with three components. The
That's where
ISP
you're going
takes
now.
out of it. So
It
they
breaks
can't black out a
something.
website. They can't black out
It breaks
a website.
something fundamental to the website called the domain name servers. The domain name servers decide how you give it a name, and they give back the number. And it's a fair system that's been established by the actual government of the internet, the people who govern the internet properly, who have decided to make a fair system that includes everyone. And this is trying to break that system to make it so you can't get back that number when you want to know it.
I believe that's the ISP provision that the senator said that he will remove from the legislation. And you're more of a
That would be
detective
better.
than I am. But I think
That would be slightly better.
well, and I believe that component, that we'll remove that in the manager's amendment. He heard a lot of concern about that, and he has adjusted it accordingly. But now, the debate's going to continue.
I think one of my concerns, John, and I really appreciate you meeting with us, is that, on VPR last week, on Vermont Additional, it was unanimous. There was just overwhelming commentary on the comment section of the website. Every call, everyone was against this. You see the same thing online today, where overwhelmingly everyone is writing on the Senator's Facebook wall. Hundreds of Vermonters. So what do we have to do? Like, how can we change policy? Because I agree with you. You are definitely listening, but like Brett was saying, we would like to see policy change. It's great that you're listening, but we want the policy.
Well, what we're saying is, what you're hearing is not true. It is not going to impact a Google, a Wikipedia. It is not going to. I mean, believe me, and we have had continually in the halls, as we get deeper into the weeds of this thing, say, okay, tell me again what this does. We just had a conversation this afternoon about the ISP provision. I said, tell me in lay people's terms what that does. And they took that out, so there's the way of finding the number. And whether they can do that domestically is a whole other thing. But so we're trying to counter what we feel is the misinformation that is out there on this legislation. I mean, that's the best we can do.
This is someone
right
who's
now.
voted for, indefinite detention for Americans. That's pretty insane. And now the internet. Oh yeah, we won't do it to Americans, but the provisions say they can.
Well, actually.
But we won't really do it that way.
And
We'll just pretend. But we had to have the language in, so we could.
Well, it actually says it in Section 1021 that it does not apply to American citizens or lawful legal residents in the U.S.
I think the concern is, and I'm sure lots of people would echo this, is that when you put something into statute, there's the ability, if I can, for interpretation.
Well,
there's the ability for subsequent administrations, like, say, a Romney administration, to say, that was a great start, and now let's further it. There's the ability for other politicians to say, oh, if this is the actual intent that was meant behind that law, and take it to a much more far-reaching place, which, I saw the signing statement, like I said last time around NTAA that I met with you, there's lots of vagaries in there, lots of room for constitutional challenges around signing statements. And I think there's a lot of the same concerns with this legislation.
If Leahy wants to use his prosecutorial heritage, why not go after all of the people who threw people out of their homes through fraud?
Yeah, we think there's a lot of serious problems in our country.
We're
wondering why you're not focused on them.
We are. I mean, we have our caseworkers working on mortgage foreclosures. We're helping veterans every day of the week. We're helping people trying to get family members over here. I mean, that's what...
But you're also working hard on this legislation.
But we don't do policy or national...
We're working on a lot of things.
If you were really... No, it seems to me that the reason why this legislation is being pushed like this and argued about like this in Senate is to raise funds from both sides. You get donations from Hollywood and donations from the Google and Wikipedia. But I mean, if you were interested in the legislative goal of fighting counterfeit and then surely Google and Wikipedia would be on your side with that, and you could create a legislation which would be a consensus with Wikipedia and Google.
I hope that eventually that's what will happen, and it hasn't been for lack of effort, and Wikipedia and Google are actively engaged.
They finally are actively being engaged, but Google refused to come testify before the Judiciary Committee for a long time.
But they
did not want to take part.
This is John, Deputy State Director here. We're in a process now to where they're talking, they're engaged, and this is part of the democratic process. But I can tell you, Patrick Leahy gets out of bed in the morning to work for Vermonters and work for this country. That's why we work for the guy. I don't take this job lightly. You may question the motives, but I can tell you in my heart and my soul that is simply not the case with
We
Pat
haven't seen
Leahy.
him try to put any bankers in jail.
I think he's tried to keep people honest. He kept our judiciary intact when it was under assault. He's got a long history, and he always...
So what are you doing to fight the corruption?
There's a number of ways. I mean, what we put in, we've tried to fight the corruption in Medicare and Medicaid.
No, I mean your corruption in this office.
There's not corruption in this office.
There obviously is.
Well, I disagree with you.
John, I'm sure there's lots of other folks who have had a chance to speak a lot, but I think for me, like, I certainly appreciate everyone who works in the office. And everyone, especially the caseworkers. You know, I've met with caseworkers in Sanders' office and had lots of really productive conversations around really awful housing situations here in Vermont and how we can find more affordable housing. But that's on a case-by-case basis. When we're talking about policy, when we're, like Brett was mentioning, that's much different. That's a systemic measure that is much more far-reaching. So I think rather than just refer the entire state of Vermont to a single caseworker, what we'd like to see in the face of the worst economic crisis since the 1930s, when only 19% of Vermonters can afford the median-priced home, is actual some policy, something from the senator's desk that allows us to have that dream of home ownership instead of going to bat for.
We see no accountability for the rich.
I would say if you were to look at the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board and the land trusts throughout this state, they have been strongly supported by Patrick Leahy, who has directed funding to those organizations for years and will continue to. He's been working on that stuff forever. And
but when it comes to criminal accountability, we only care about it for the poor. We don't care about it when it's the bankers who do it. Well, there hasn't been one banker that went to jail for the most massive fraud we have ever had in this country. Not one of them has gone to jail. You know? So we only see, you know, and everyone is so forgiving except for somebody who steals a piece of bread or something, then they can go to jail. And but there's no policy on fighting crime when it comes to the biggest crimes.
I think you see
There's
Patrick
no
again,
accountability, and he's not doing anything about that.
Oh, yes. You look at the Senate Judiciary Committee and the work that they've tried to do. I mean, you know, he kept the Justice Department in tow when they were letting politics impact how they conducted business. You know, he's been fighting these battles for a long time. We'll continue. You look at what he tries to do around truth in sentencing. You know, DNA, so innocent people who have been convicted get released from jail. I mean, he's been working on the stuff that isn't real sexy, but makes a real difference to people in their lives. He's got a long history of that.
But at the same time, the gap between the rich and poor, income inequality, has been growing for a long time too. You could go back and say it's been growing since around the same time he got into office. Especially, not saying he's the direct cause of it, but there's certainly been a fairly stable body with 94% incumbency in Congress and in the Senate, looking over this period of 40 years, where the poor have done nothing but get poorer and the rich have done nothing but get super rich by policies, by economic practices. So you say he's been here and he's been part of the system and he's been working for people for so long. As a Vermonter who's seen downward mobility, he's been part of the system for so long, that's not exactly selling me on.
Well, no, I argue what he's been doing while he's been in there, about affordable housing, about improving downtown landscapes, about making sure that hungry kids get food.
Vermont's one of
and
the
all of
states
those things have gotten
the
worse.
most growth between the gap between the rich and the poor, of the poor getting poorer and the rich getting richer. You know, he might have been putting those policies in, but had the actual effect that Vermonters have seen, the numbers don't bear that out.
You know, it's not something that's going to be solved overnight, but I think you will see that the time and effort and financial resources that Pat Leahy has directed to Vermont around keeping farms sustainable so people can actually make a living, so people have a place to live, to make it so downtowns are actually livable, to make sure we have a law enforcement system that people
Livable?
respect.
Have you seen rents in Burlington
I
lately?
live here.
Oh my God.
No, he doesn't control the rent, but he's done a lot to make sure there's affordable housing for people who wouldn't otherwise have them. The Vermont Housing Conservation Trust Board, the land trusts throughout the state of Vermont.
The Burlington Community Land Trust.
He's just been, you know, it's not sexy, it's not, he doesn't brag about it.
But could we acknowledge for a second he's done a lot and not enough?
Well,
not enough, because we're in trouble.
There's always more to do. And you know, he's tried to make sure that we tax those who make the most money more. He hasn't been successful. It doesn't mean he quits, and he's not going to keep trying. You know, he's one of 100. He does what he can. It takes 60 votes in the Senate to get something just to have the debate on it. You know, he's doing
our
what he
other
can.
senators
So
gets
I have
this is a bad
just
bill.
sort of about specifically how to, you know, things are going on this particular bill. You know, right now, as Johnny's pointed out, as other people have pointed out, A lot of Vermonters are against it. A lot of people around this country are against it. And you've put forward your narrative that that this is because we're all misinformed and that
there is misinformation out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, keeping it passive voice. There's misinformation out there, and but I think that right now there's a discussion going on where each side is trying to inform the other. At what point would Patrick Leahy be willing to change his vote in the face of public pressure for him to respect the voices of Vermonters?
What we call representative government.
But he does respect the voice of Vermonters. And as I pointed out about the ISP provision, he has been willing to take that out as a result of what he's heard from not just Vermont, but from other people. It made sense. He said, let's take it out. Let's study it some more. We won't put that in the bill. I think that's a step in the right direction. He doesn't use a gauge, like 50%, 60%. I was in the state legislature when we passed civil unions. A lot of people didn't like it. If you just had a popular vote as to who liked it at that point, it would have never taken place. Senator Leahy works and constructs sound legislation. If you look over his history, he's done some great work. This will be no exception. He will make sure it works. Google is engaged now in this discussion.
And can I just say one point about Google? And I'm not trying to interrupt you. But, I've taken a couple of calls from people who said, well, I trust Google in this. Google is not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. Google is a for-profit company. This is not all about the goodness of their heart. They are making money off of the rogue websites that sell fake products. But they are presenting this as...
So you got a bill for Canal Street, New York?
And they're spending millions of dollars on this. But they're presenting it as, some act of kindness. And they have a profit motive here.
Of course
and
they do.
Anybody who thinks they don't.
And the other side does as well.
That's right, but
you acknowledge this fundraising dynamic. Both sides have an interest. You're in the middle.
Excuse me, let me finish. But I'm sure they do. The other side does have a profit motive. But everyone I have talked to about Google acts as if they don't. Oh, well, I trust Google. Well, Google has a money motive here.
What we've been trying to do is counteract what we feel, and in talking with our judiciary staff to craft the bill, where the misinformation lies. The biggest nut is it's not going to impact Google, Wikipedia, and those entities. As a result of the input that the senator has received, he's removed the ISP provision. I think that's a step in the right direction. So there is an impact. It has changed already from taking input. So it's not like he's deaf to what's going on. If he thinks there are legitimate changes like that, he will make them. But
did that change in PIPA as well as SOPA?
They haven't introduced the actual length. They're going on the House side as well. But this is the manager's amendment that he'll put forward. They haven't been in session yet. They're going back on the 24th, and that's when he said, I'm going to pull out the ISP provision.
I guess we trust Google more than Congress because we've seen what Congress has done
to us. So
if
the amendment is stripped from the bill, does that mean Leahy would then vote against the full bill?
No.
If the amendment isn't attached to it?
He is, from the concerns that he's heard, he said, okay, let's study this some more. We're going to take that out.
But he's not so opposed to it that he would oppose the whole bill if that provision remains.
If it's not, he's willing to take that amendment out, to make that amendment.
But if that amendment fails, the ISP provision remains, he would sign the whole bill.
I can't predict anything. I would assume if Senator Leahy...
But he's not saying he would oppose it.
We aren't there. I would assume if Senator Leahy proposes an amendment to a legislation that he's co-sponsoring, chances are very good that that amendment will fly because he's a co-sponsor of the bill. So we'll see what happens when we get there.
Well, that's why Google didn't want to deal, because if there's a little bit of compromise and it's still a really bad bill that doesn't benefit them at all, that's just bad for them.
I think they're going to actively engage in the discussion.
They are involved in it.
Well, now, I mean,
I have to leave, but thank you guys for what you do, and also thank you for doing this is exactly what the big profit makers in Hollywood and the people who are really going to benefit from this bill, the ones who make far more money than probably most of us in
the
this room.
children in sweatshops in China who are making counterfeit goods that are being sold online?
So
thank
it's
you for
okay as long
respecting
as
my
they
right
make
to
the
speak.
real
I look forward to the same level of interest in big, sweeping, broad legislation to address historic levels of income inequality that go back to the most serious since the 19 teens.
And I just want to say this is a very dangerous bill, and I think it will set precedent for more legislation, dangerous legislation that could potentially infringe on our freedom of information. And I mean, if you have to outweigh the, I don't know. I mean, I think our First Amendment is particularly the most important thing, and there's problems all over the world. There's, but we have to keep intact our integrity, and I feel very strongly about this.
Senator Leahy, thank you.
Switch off. Thank you.
We don't have $900,000, but Google does. So,
Much more welcome. Thank you. All right, thanks for coming in.
Take care.